This lesson is on rotations and looking at the rules. In this lesson, we're going to look at only rotating about the origin. When you have that, you have different rules that work for 90 degrees, 180 degrees, and 270 degrees. If you learn the rotations wrap that I posted in the notes, then that rotations wrap is all about counterclockwise. So we're going to look at this first one, which says rotate 90 degrees counterclockwise. So if we start with X and Y, what that means is 90 degrees, find the opposite of this Y and switch it. So find the opposite of the Y and then switch the X and the Y. So that's the rule we're going to use. So we're going to start by naming what C is. C is at the point -2, comma, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So -2, 5. And then D is at -4, comma, 1. And if we're going to follow this rule here, let's look at what C prime is going to be. C prime, we want to find the opposite of this Y, which would be -5, and then we want to flip it. So -5, -2. We'll do the same with D. D, we want to find the opposite of this Y, which would make that -1, and then we want to flip it. So -1, comma, -4. So let's plot those points. So we're going to plot the point -5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, -2. That's going to be called C prime. We're going to plot the point -1, comma, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's going to be called D prime. And we're going to connect the dots. Now, just to show you how this kind of works, I'm going to mark the origin. This is your answer. But in theory, if you connect D and D prime to the origin, you should see that 90-degree angle right in there. And so it just rotated 90 degrees backwards to get to this D prime, which makes it counterclockwise. Then in the next problem, number 2, it says that we're going to be rotating the segment ME about 180 degrees about the origin. Well, let's start with the rule. You're going to be taking your X and Y, and when you do 180 degrees, 180 degrees, find the opposite of both, leave them. So we're going to find the opposite of both. There's the opposite of X, there's the opposite of Y, and we leave them in their position. So let's go ahead and find out what M is in this case. It's at 1, 2, 3, so -3, comma, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so -5. And then E is at -2, -2. So we're going to use this rule here, 180 degrees, find the opposite of both of these, but leave them. So the opposite of -3 is +3, opposite of -5 is +5. We'll do it for E. Opposite of -2 is 2, opposite of -2 is 2, and again, leave them in position. So now we're going to plot the point 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to call that M prime. We're going to plot the point 2, 2. We're going to call that E prime. Again, I'm going to make this a line segment, and let's just look. If I were marking that origin, look at E going to that point that we rotated around to E prime. There's that straight line, or 180 degrees. In number 3, this time we're going to rotate this triangle 90 degrees clockwise. Well, remember that wrap, if you learned it in class, that was counterclockwise. 90 degrees clockwise is the same as 270 degrees counterclockwise. So let's look at the rule. You'll start with your X and your Y. 270 degrees, find the opposite of X, and then switch them. So we're going to do the opposite of X and switch the X and Y position. So let's go ahead and get our coordinates here. J is at -1, comma, -2. V is at 4, -1. And K is at 2, -4. Now we're going to go ahead and rotate each of those points. I'm just going to move them down here. So we've got J prime. So 270 degrees, find the opposite of X. So we're going to find the opposite, which is 1, and then we're going to switch them. So it's going to be -2, 1. Let's do it to V. 270 degrees, find the opposite of X. So that would make this -4, and then we're going to switch them. And now let's do one last time for K. 270 degrees, find the opposite of this X. So that makes that -2, and now we switch them, -4, -2. Now let's go ahead and plot these points. So for J, we're going to plot the point -2, 1, so that's J prime. For V prime, we're going to plot the point -1, -4, 1, 2, 3, 4, so that's V prime. And K is going to be negative 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, negative 2. So this is going to be K prime. So we're going to connect these dots. And then, again, just to illustrate how this works, if I take the J and I take it to the origin, which we rotate around, and the J prime there, so that makes that 90-degree angle. But what happened here is we are going counterclockwise, so this is like 90, 180, 270 to get it all the way back here. Now, in number 4, it says we're going to say if T is rotated 270 to counterclockwise about the origin, what's T prime? So what we want to do is think about that rule. 270 degrees counterclockwise, 270 degrees, find the opposite of this X and switch the X and the Y. So we're going to take T, which is at 3, 1. All right, and we're going to find the opposite of this X, which makes it negative 3, and we're going to switch them. So T prime is at 1, negative 3. Finally, it says if G prime is 4 or 5 after a 180-degree rotation, what is G? Well, let's figure out what a 180-degree rotation looks like. 180 degrees, find the opposite of both. So we're finding the opposite of both. So now what we're going to do is say, okay, well, this was G prime here. G prime is 4 or 5. Well, if we found the opposite of both to get this, then we just need to go backwards. So we're going to find the opposite again. So that would be negative 4, negative 5. Let me show you. Because if this is our pre-image point, and we said 180 degrees rotation, we're going to say opposite of both, which would make that 4 or 5. So the answer to this one would be G is at negative 4, negative 5, and that's your pre-image coordinate.